I'm participating, I'm part of a process, and yet I'm not being heard. And just as Mrs. Moran said, we've been using and still using various tools to, ensure that, our voices are being heard. And so, we don't want to just come to these policy-making tables to be decoration, to say that we have talked to people of color, we have talked to environmental justice communities. There are too many times and too many instances in which our communities find themselves in that situation. However, the needs of our community members are not progressing through policy measures. And that's where the rubber meets the road. And we don't see that simply with engagement. You cannot have engagement alone without having the implementation of, policy measures that will actually improve their quality of life.
So what kinds of policy measures are you looking for?
Well, to give you a couple of examples, as community folks have talked about from various angles, from both business angles and residential angles, when they've talked about, for example, rising property values, and it's not so much that rising property values is a problem. I mean, that's a good thing. What it is the taxation, that if you are, low income, a senior, if you're someone who's invested in that community for a very long time, and yet, here you're being priced for all the, the perks that the area is going to bring, that's going to place an economic burden on you. And there are multiple examples where light rail and other kinds of revitalizations put pressures on existing low-income, minority, previously disinvested communities where those folks economically get pushed out and pushed to the side. So we've said, how about a policy like a tax abatement, to help homeowners, and a policy like that where the benefits of that could be passed on to renters and kind of act as a bit of a rent control, because certainly renters are very vulnerable in a increasingly valuable market. We've also asked for land set aside, because the value of land is going to go up on University Avenue. It already has gone up over the last number of years in anticipation of light rail. And we're wanting, a number of our small entrepreneurial businesses to be able to remain on the corridor, and then those who still want to return to the corridor or live in a neighborhood and want to start a business on the corridor can do so and be able to afford it. And so again, we're not wanting those existing community members to be strangers, in their own neighborhood, or to, again, be forced out of their neighborhood. So those are just a few examples.
You mention, on occasion, cumulative effects or cumulative impacts of the Central Corridor, and your effort is designed essentially to reduce those, that the potential negative impacts.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about that. What
mean?
kinds of cumulative impacts would we be expected to see over 5-10 years?
Right. Well, just a quick and dirty definition. And cumulative is really looking at, when a large federal investment is coming into a neighborhood, what kind of other federal or private activities have taken place before that this new activity can compound. And so because this neighborhood has this very unique experience with I-94 and with urban renewal, all too often, folks can make that very quick link and association, thinking that, okay, yeah, these projects done us in the past. And so we're, seeing that this project isn't going to help matters. If anything, it could very well exacerbate, previous federally supported projects that were revitalizing oriented. So cumulative impact specifically to the Rondo neighborhood is talking about displacement. I-94 had a physical displacement where homes were actually taken. Businesses and institutions were physically removed to make way for the freeway. Urban renewal certainly, again, came through and saw, a neighborhood like ours as a disinvested community, and tore down homes and created, for example, what you see now, Central Village and Unidale Mall. People don't realize that. And so you always have to investigate the history of an area. And so with light rail, we're seeing not the same kind of impact, but a similar, relatable, I should say, impact associated with displacement, but this time more economically based displacement. And some people have used a term, maybe a sophisticated eminent domain type of a process.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. If you're just joining us, I'm Lisa Tabor, guest host of St. Paul Forum, along with John Forty, while Mike Wassenaar is on vacation, or sabbatical, sorry. We're talking with two residents from St. Paul who have recently filed a lawsuit against the Central Corridor, along with additional plaintiffs. Veronica, you mentioned the Rondo neighborhood, and that seems to be something of a rallying cry. However, there's definitely a group of people who do not get why is Rondo still being held up as an example of poor governance, poor urban development. Could you give us a reason why?
Right. Well, I think around the country, Rondo has kind of been seen as a poster child for how urban or how interstate highway systems have destroyed neighborhoods. And it actually, if I'm not mistaken, was part of why even this particular law that we're dealing with, environmental justice, came into being, is to prevent transportation projects, to prevent federal investments from doing the same kind of damage that such projects like that did in the 1960s. However, it's incumbent upon the citizens, to make sure that these laws are adhered to so that you're not repeating the past. And that's the point we're trying to make, is to not repeat the past.
And I think in a lot of ways, for those who don't get it, and why we're here, why the lawsuit was filed itself, is that we have a group in the community of residents who are we're not against light rail. We're not against redevelopment. It's a great thing. It's a good thing. I think most people, I talk to neighbors and community members all the time, who wants to see a community the economic engine is vibrant. The community is vibrant. That is a good thing, but not at the expense of present residents, current residents. How can we minimize the impacts that this development will have on a community of people, again, who are at a certain income level, who is a community of color, who and where a project is coming into a community, not by really the invite of residents. It really wasn't input from the community members. There were a vast number of residents who at some time attended those meetings, but voices were not heard. Policies and decisions were not changed or because of their voices being there.